Gandiel has officially broken his silence, and what he's exposing is straight up unbelievable. You remember that Netflix documentary about Diddy everybody's been going crazy over? Well, the footage Gandiel collected was so explosive, Netflix wouldn't dare touch it. They couldn't air it. They wouldn't air it. But here's the real bombshell. Gene is getting ready to leak every single piece of evidence that 50 Cent had to cut out. And trust me, once you hear this, everything you thought you knew is about to flip upside down. Look, I know you clicked this video because you want the real story, the unfiltered truth, and that's exactly what you're about to get. Gandiel, Diddy's former bodyguard, the man who was right there for all of it, finally sat down for an interview. And this time, he's not biting his tongue. Here's the part most people don't know. Gan was actually supposed to appear in the Netflix documentary. He spoke with 50 Cent for 45 minutes. They had plans. They were ready. But something went left. The director disrespected him straight to his face, and that's when Gene backed out. And now, he's dropping all the stories that never made it. Into the final cut, you're about to hear the real version of the City College tragedy. The truth behind Anthony Wolf Jones. What actually happened to Kim Porter, and why top-tier celebrities paid to keep their names far away from this documentary. Everything 50 Cent couldn't show you is coming out right here, right now, so let's get into it. Before we get into the leaked receipts, you need to understand what was happening behind the scenes, because this part is crazy. 50 Cent and Netflix just dropped a documentary called Sean Combs, The Reckoning. It shot straight to #1. Everybody's watching it. Everybody's talking. But here's what they're not saying. Some of the most critical stories never made it on screen. Gandiel was Diddy's bodyguard for years. This man saw everything. The wild parties, the fights, the shady business plays, the heartbreaks, the tragedies. And for years, he's been stockpiling footage, documents, and proof, waiting for the perfect moment to finally speak. Gan genuinely believed in 50's documentary. He thought this was going to be the moment the full truth finally came out. But then he met the director, Alex Stapleton, and let's just say, that meeting went completely off the rails.
It don't even sound, I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, you got, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff, the first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you. I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out of this documentary.
Gan wanted to handle this the right way. He wasn't just trying to pop up for a quick interview. He tried to lock in a full package deal with two other guys who'd been around Diddy since day one, Tim and Kirk Burrows. Together, these three could have laid out the entire timeline, from Diddy's early grind to the street drama to the rise of the bad boy empire. Literally, everything. Gene asked for $50,000 for all three of them as a bundle. And honestly, that's more than fair when you think about the kind of footage, receipts, and real evidence they had stacked up. But here's where everything took a sharp turn. Alex Stapleton, the director, hit Gene with something wild. She told him that 50 Cent doesn't decide what goes into the documentary, and he doesn't control who gets paid. Basically, she said, 50's name is just there to boost the marketing, but he isn't actually running the project. Gene felt completely disrespected. He even pulled out invoices showing what other big documentaries had paid him before. Solid proof. But she brushed it off and called him a liar. Imagine that. A man who risked his life protecting Diddy, who watched real crimes unfold, who kept evidence for years. And she treated him like he was making it all up. And here's the real twist. While Gene was trying to negotiate a fair setup for everybody, Kirk Burrows was cutting secret side deals. That's the industry for you. Everybody claims loyalty, but they're only watching their own pockets. Gan was trying to help the whole team get paid right, and Kirk was already maneuvering behind the scenes. So Gene said, forget it. He walked away. That's why the documentary you saw on Netflix feels incomplete. The man with the most knowledge refused to be part of it. But now, he's ready to reveal everything they left on the cutting room floor. Let's start with something the documentary barely touched. how Bad Boy Records was actually structured. This part right here explains everything. Kirk Burroughs, the same guy we just talked about, owned 25% of Bad Boy Records from the very beginning. Diddy owned the other 75%. But here's the twist nobody expected. The entire company was under Diddy's mother's name, Janice Combs. Why would Diddy do that? Why not put the company under his own name? According to Gandeal, it was a strategic way to dodge legal responsibility. Diddy knew lawsuits were coming after the City College tragedy, and we'll get into that in a minute. But 9 people died at an event he organized. Their families were preparing to sue, so Diddy made sure the company wasn't legally tied to him. Smart? Yes. Savage? Absolutely. But it didn't stop there. Diddy eventually decided he wanted Kirk's 25% too, and according to Kirk's own testimony, Diddy didn't show up with lawyers, he showed up with a baseball bat. He threatened Kirk, forced him to sign over his share, and walked away controlling everything. Kirk tried suing in 2003, but the case got tossed because too much time had passed. Just think about that. Kirk helped build Bad Boy Records from the ground up. He did the work. He created that empire alongside Diddy. And in the end, Diddy took it all, using intimidation and threats. Kirk even ended up homeless at one point, while Diddy became a billionaire off the foundation they built together. The documentary mentioned a small piece of this, but they never went deep. Gene Deal could have exposed the entire setup, how Diddy used his mother's name to hide money, dodge lawsuits, and keep himself protected. But none of that made it to the final cut. And we all know why.
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big. It wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis.
Now this is where things take a much darker turn. Gene Deal says there's an entire murder story the documentary straight up skipped, and it's about Anthony Wolf Jones. Wolf wasn't just any security guy. He was Bad Boy's head of security from day one. Before Clive Davis, before the record contracts, before the fame, Wolf was already there, riding for Diddy harder than anybody. This man knew everything, and I mean everything. Who got paid off? Which situations got cleaned up? What really went down at those wild private parties? Even the stuff people whisper about but never say out loud. Wolf knew where all the bodies were buried. And according to Gandeal, Diddy's own actions directly set the stage for Wolf's murder. Gan says the documentary team didn't have the intel to tell this story correctly. No deep investigation, no receipts, nothing. Or maybe they had it and didn't want to open that door. Wolf was killed by someone tied to BMF, the Black Mafia family, one of the biggest and most feared criminal organizations in hip-hop history. And Gene is saying there's a direct link between Wolf's death and Diddy that nobody wants to talk about. But what did the documentary do? Showed a couple of pictures, said he was security, and moved on. Why? Because this story is dangerous. It involves real criminals, real murders, and real organized crime. Netflix didn't want that heat. Even 50 Cent probably didn't want to risk blowing that door wide open. But Gandeal says this story has to be told, because Wolf's death wasn't random. It ties into everything else happening behind the scenes.
It was Puff, Heavy D, and Jessica. You know what I'm saying? Jessica was the reason why those kids lost their life, because she locked the door on those kids running down the step. You understand? You could see her name in a news article, but they didn't mention nothing about her taking place, but they try to put Heavy D, God bless the dead, out there, and they put Puff out there. You know what I'm saying? She should have been the main one, because she is the one who locked the door on the kids. You understand? She is the one who locked the door on the kids, and all those kids lost their life.
All right, this next part is going to straight up make your blood boil. Because yes, the documentary talked about the City College tragedy, but they didn't give you anywhere near the full truth. Gandeal was actually there that night. He didn't hear rumors. He didn't get secondhand info. He watched everything unfold, and what he revealed completely flips the whole story on its head. December 28, 1991. Diddy puts together this celebrity basketball game at City College in New York. It was supposed to be a huge charity event. Heavy D was involved. All the stars were showing up. Mike Tyson, LL Cool J, everybody. The place was jam-packed. Gandeal's security crew had been hired to control the outside. 18 men deep. Dogs, gates, crowd control systems, the whole setup. Gan knew exactly how Harlem crowds explode when celebrities show up, so he was prepared. But the day before the event, Diddy comes to Gene and says Heavy D doesn't want Gene's security team anymore. They were fired on the spot. No outside protection. Nothing. So the night of the event, everything spiraled instantly. Thousands of people trying to get inside. And when Mike Tyson and LL Cool J walked through the front door instead of the back, the crowd lost their minds. People rushed the entrance, bodies piling in the stairwell. But here's the part the documentary completely left. Out there was a promoter working with Diddy and Heavy D, a woman named Jessica Rosenblum. When she saw the crowd surging, Jessica panicked, but not for the people. According to Jean, she panicked about the money box, the cash, the ticket sales. So what did she do? Jean says Jessica grabbed the money and locked the door at the bottom of the stairs to protect the cash. And when she locked that door, she trapped hundreds of people in that narrow stairwell. People died. 9. Kids crushed to death because someone chose to protect money over human lives. Gene couldn't force his way down the stairs through the crowd. He had to sprint all the way around the gym, find another entrance, and open doors from the inside. By the time he reached them, it was too late. He performed CPR on a 17-year-old boy, and the kid still died in his arms. The boy's older brother stood there crying, saying, "This is the first time I ever took my little brother anywhere. My mama's gonna kill me." Gene Deal lived this. He knows exactly who locked that door. He knows exactly how it happened. But Jessica Rosenblum was never held accountable. Her name popped up in old news articles, and that was it. No charges, no consequences, nothing. The documentary mentioned City College, but they kept the story They focused on Diddy and Heavy D. They didn't mention Jessica. They didn't explain why Gene's entire security team was fired. They didn't tell you that someone literally locked a door to protect cash while 9 people died right behind it. Gan tried to tell this story in the documentary, and it never made the final cut, and that raises a big question. Let's talk about why. Gan really walked away from this documentary because the drama behind the scenes was just as insane as the stories he was trying to expose. Gan had set up that whole package deal. Him, Tim, and Kirk Burrows. 3 different angles of Diddy's life. Tim knew the childhood and early years. Kirk knew the business machine. Gene knew the streets, the violence, the security world. Together, they could have delivered the full truth. But then Alex Stapleton, the director, started switching up. She told Gene the money he was asking for was crazy. She said the documentary didn't have that kind of budget. Gene showed her invoices from other documentaries that had paid him similar amounts. He had proof in black and white, but she brushed it off like it meant nothing. Then she dropped a line that really hit Gene the wrong way. She said 50 Cent doesn't decide what goes in the documentary. He doesn't control who gets paid. According to her, 50's name was just a promotional tool, the face of the project, but not the one calling the shots. Think about that for a second. They're selling this as 50 Cent's documentary about Diddy, leveraging their history and rivalry to grab attention. But behind the scenes, 50 Cent has zero control over what actually makes the cut. That's wild. Gene felt completely disrespected. He's been spilling these stories for years on his own channels, showing real evidence, footage, pictures, documents, and the director acted like his contributions didn't matter at all. Meanwhile, Kirk Burrows was making secret side deals, calling Gene, trying to pressure him into taking less. Gene discovered Kirk was negotiating a separate contract behind everyone's back. That's the industry for you. Everyone looking out for number one. So Gene said, forget it. He walked away, and that's why the Netflix documentary feels incomplete. That's why so many major stories didn't make it to the screen. The person with the deepest knowledge refused to participate because he wasn't treated right. Here's something that really gets people talking. The documentary barely mentioned Kim Porter, Diddy's ex. The mother of his children, passed suddenly in 2018 at just 47. Officially, it was pneumonia, but there's been a lot of speculation about what really happened. Kim Porter had seen everything: the parties, the deals, the violence, and then she was gone. And yet, the documentary glossed over her story. Multiple sources say her story was deliberately avoided, too sensitive, too controversial, maybe even too risky. But Gene Deal knows the truth. He had protected Kim at times, he knows what went down, and none of that made it into the final cut. They tossed in a few photos, mentioned she was Diddy's baby mama, and moved on. For someone who played such a major role in Diddy's life, that's a glaring omission. Now, let's talk about something else. Suspicious. Diddy threw massive parties for decades. A-list actors, musicians, athletes, politicians, literally everyone. That was Diddy's world. So why doesn't the documentary show a single celebrity from those events? Why are there zero stories from those parties? Think about it. Diddy threw hundreds of legendary parties, yet supposedly no major celebrities were ever involved. Come on. Gandil believes there's a reason for that. According to him, A-list celebrities paid 50 Cent to keep them out of the documentary. Think about it. Careers, families, reputations on the line. If their names were linked to Diddy's darker dealings, their lives could be ruined. So yes, they paid, and 50 Cent, being the businessman he is, accepted the money not to protect Diddy, not to cover up the truth, but because he's smart about navigating Hollywood. He just wanted to expose Diddy without ruining other people's lives. which means the documentary isn't telling the full story. It's sanitized. It's polished, a version that shields the powerful while making Diddy look like the sole villain. And Gene sees right through that.
Have you seen that the documentary, the 50 Cent?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
For Diddy?
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, you working
Everybody
hard.
telling me you got to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Part of me don't want to see it
you probably don't.
because it's all skewed, man. Like when you put stuff together, you create whatever narratives you want to, and at the end of the day, everybody being programmed. You know, right now the man's serving time.
Right.
You know, he went before the court. The court said this, and everything is God. But God said this is what he got to do. He got to do 5 years in pen. Let him do his 5 years.
Speaking of celebrities staying quiet, look at what Marlon Wayans said when someone asked if he watched the documentary. His answer was, interesting. Marlon said he hasn't seen it and probably won't bother watching it. But then he dropped a line that made everybody sit up. He called the whole thing a narrative. He said, when you put stuff together, you can create whatever story you want. Everybody's being programmed. Now why would Marlon say that? Is he defending Diddy? Is he calling out Netflix for pushing a biased storyline? Or, and this is what a lot of insiders whisper, does Marlon have his own history with Diddy that he'd rather not revisit on camera? Rumors about those two have been around for years. Nothing confirmed, just quiet conversations in the background. So when Marlon starts talking about programming and refuses to watch it, you gotta wonder, what does he know that we don't? Gene Deal probably has stories about Marlon too. Stories about a lot of celebrities, but none of them wanted their names in this documentary, and that silence speaks louder than anything.
You get that footage of Diddy.
I figure most journalists would not disclose their sources.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time that his legal team, Diddy, that everybody knows that this footage is now seeing the light of day. Perhaps.
Now let's get into the most explosive part of the entire documentary. The footage, that behind-the-scenes video of Diddy right before the arrest. Where did 50 even get that? The documentary shows Diddy in a New York hotel room, talking to his lawyer on speakerphone, stressing about the media, trying to strategize his next move. This wasn't promo footage. This was private, intimate, stuff that was never meant to be seen. Diddy hired a videographer to film him during that time. Probably because he planned his own documentary or wanted a record of everything. But that footage legally belonged to Diddy. NDAs were signed. Contracts were in place. Yet somehow, 50 Cent ended up with it. Diddy's lawyers instantly sent a cease and desist to Netflix, calling it stolen, unauthorized footage. They demanded Netflix take the whole documentary down. Netflix stood firm, saying they obtained it legally, but wouldn't explain how. 50 kept quiet. The videographer stayed silent. So how did it really get out? Maybe the videographer sold it because Diddy never paid him, which lines up with Gene's claim that Diddy has a long history of not paying people. Or maybe 50 paid someone to leak it. Maybe it was straight up stolen. No one knows. But whatever happened, that footage changes everything, and it's the only part of the documentary Gene thinks is actually new. Gene also talks about his first-hand experience with Diddy's violence. One of the most disturbing stories involves Misa Hilton, Diddy's first baby mother. After Gene left Diddy's team, Misa hired him as her personal protection because she was scared of what Diddy might do. Gene charged her $2,250 for just a couple hours, and he told her straight up, if Diddy shows up and sees you with me, he won't try anything. And he meant it. Diddy respected Gene's presence or feared it. The documentary even shows rapper Eric Sermon talking about the time he was in a car with Misa and Diddy rolled up and attacked her in the street. Eric admits Diddy told him to step around the corner and fight, and Eric just ignored him and went to listen to music. Gene calls that unbelievable. He says if anyone was in his car and got attacked, he would have moved immediately, period. According to Gene, Diddy's violence toward women wasn't some shocking new revelation. It was his pattern for years. Everybody in the industry knew, they just looked the other way because Diddy was rich and powerful. That Cassie hallway footage wasn't new behavior. It was just the first time the public finally saw it. So what does Gene Deal really think of the documentary? He watched it closely, took notes, and his verdict is brutal. It's old news. Everything's shown. The public had already heard. The freak-offs, the manipulation, the abuse, none of it was new to insiders. The only fresh element was that leaked behind-the-scenes footage. That's it. Gene says you watch this documentary once, and you're done. There's nothing deep enough to rewatch. Nothing groundbreaking. And the reason is simple. They kept the real stories out. They didn't want danger. They didn't want lawsuits. They didn't want to expose powerful names. So they made a safe documentary that blamed everything on one man, Diddy, while protecting everyone else who enabled him. Gene knows the truth. Diddy wasn't the only monster in the room. He was just the face of a much bigger system. And the documentary avoided all of that. And that's why Gene calls it incomplete. At the end of the day, Gene has been telling the real stories for years, long before Netflix, long before 50 Cent got involved. So now I want to hear from you. What part shocked you the most? What do you think 50 should have included? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And stay alert. This story is far from over.